Good evening, everybody. This is your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, a wandering author, reminding you that we're all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. Today, we're going to finish up discussing the final virtue in Book 4 of Aristotle's Nichomachean Ethics, Chapter 9. I use the word shame again towards the end of Book 4. Virtues stop having convenient names that we use all the time, like the first couple ones did, like courage. But Aristotle describes it as a fear of disrepute, also modesty. But it differs from the other virtues that we've discussed so far because it's not really a proper virtue. Aristotle calls it, quote, modesty cannot be properly described as a virtue, for it seems to be a feeling rather than a disposition. It affects people similarly to other dangers or fears. For people who are ashamed blush, while if you're afraid, you go pale, right? Both, therefore, appear to be, in a sense, bodily affections, and this indicates a feeling rather than a disposition. Interesting vein of logic, hashtag interesting insight, and that's from chapter 9, that's section 2 in the Beckham translation. Older men should not feel ashamed, though, but young people may benefit from it. Shame isn't a virtue, and it's not something that you should feel, even if it's a feeling. We think, therefore, it's proper to be modest, because as young people live by a feeling, they often cause errors, and modesty may keep them in check. I've definitely made some youthful mistakes. So, since the young folk are frequently led by emotion, a healthy sense of modesty can help them self-regulate, controlling impulsive or emotional behaviors. As we age, we must learn to control ourselves, thus making modesty non-essential. Quote, no one would praise an older man for being shamefaced, since we think he ought not to do anything of which he need be ashamed. That's because virtuous men avoid shameful acts. For indeed, the virtuous man does not feel shame, if shame is the feeling caused by base actions. One ought not to do base actions, and so never one. The only reason you should ever feel ashamed in Aristotle's eyes is if you do something that's bad. And if you're a good person, then you won't do bad things, so there's no reason for a good person to ever feel ashamed. It's pretty straightforward logic, but if you're somebody that often is plagued by a feeling of shame, convince yourself of something that you're a good person. And if you're a good person, then you shouldn't feel ashamed, period. Shame is the mark of a base man, a bad person, and springs from a character capable of doing a shameful act. So if you see somebody that is acting shamefully, it is actually a signal that they might be the kind of person who should be ashamed of who they are, right? And Aristotle also points out that shame involves a certain amount of absurdity, because a man is of such a nature that he'd be ashamed if he does a shameful act. He should therefore think himself virtuous, since actions to cause shame must be voluntary. What he's saying is, if you feel ashamed, you're conscious enough to realize that what you're doing is bad. But if you have voluntary control over your actions, then you should just stop doing those bad things, and then you have no reason to feel ashamed. It really is pretty straightforward. Modesty and shame differ from the other virtues because they are conditional. A good man would be ashamed if he did something that was shameful, and though shamelessness and not shirking from shameful acts is base, this does not prove that to be ashamed when one does a shameful act is virtuous. Yeah, so if you're totally shameless, that's a bad character trait, but just because you possess a sense of shame doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good person either. Now, the sun is starting to go down. That's the one bad thing about it being wintertime, and erasing and redoing this takes a long time. Plus, I have to walk with this for about 2 miles to get back to my car. And but we finally finished book 4, and I will do a recap where we'll put all of the different virtues on one sheet here. Again, we'll still do our walking around history stuff too later on. Next week I'm going to be in Augusta in training for my upcoming job position. And so I'm going to take this with me to the hotel room, and we'll be able to continue. I've got plenty of stuff to keep me busy. Anyways, this is a wandering author here, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. What are you guys doing in order to inspire, uplift, and empower your local communities tonight? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part. You can count on me to do mine daily. Till next time, I love y'all.